Hello everybody and welcome back to ArcheAge Inspiration. Today's rolls are 1, 2, and 9, so let's see what we get. Looks like that will be Battle Rage, Defense, and Shadow Play. I think that is actually a Blighter. Is there a Blighter or Abolisher? Okay, that's Abolisher. I always forget which one's which. So this is Blighter. Yep, Blighter. Alright, I'm not super great at building physical builds because I don't have a lot of experience, but it sounds like a good time to learn. Be back. Okay, let's take a look at the Blighter here. Now, Shadowplay, Defense, and Battle Rage have a lot of inherent synergies. I mean, they're all sort of physical builds. They all want a high weapon damage. They all want to, probably wear plate, leather. There's a lot of just inherent synergy between these three trees, just by the way that they're all designed. They all have very similar goals. Physical damage, tankability, tricks in melee combat. So the individual taste of somebody who's playing a Blighter is probably going to vary. I mean, I could see this build being great for PvE tanking, 1 versus 1, 5 versus 5, 50 versus 50. Just depends on how you want to play it. So what I kind of took here is a build that's got a little bit of maneuverability, some good comboing, good damage, good defenses, just kind of an all-around build. There are a number of other options that I didn't take that could certainly be useful for just about any situation. For example, Lasso for both tanking in PvE and for PvP fights where you can yank somebody close to your allies. Stuff like Whirlwind, Slash, and Sunder Earth allow for more AoE options. Even Free Runner can give you extra maneuverability and a little bit of agility, and Shadow Step for extra maneuverability as well. Shadow Play itself is quite maneuverable in terms of escaping, but it also has an approach with Overwhelm. And likewise, Battle Rage has a lot of approach abilities, Charge and Tiger Strike. The most popular combo that I would say you'll see with Shadow Play and Battle Rage is the Dark Runner, which instead of having defense has Auramancy. Auramancy allows for even more maneuverability, higher damage because of the attack speed reductions or the attack speed increases and cooldown reductions that it gives via its Inspire stacks. But what you get out of here is another continuation of a very solid CC chain right here between Shield Slam and Bull Rush. Very powerful. Redoubt is always good as a counter to enemy melee characters because the majority of the CC you're going to be doing here is either stun or trip, and especially the trip. So being immune to trip, which is actually knocked down here with Redoubt, is very powerful in the melee versus melee fight, as well as invincibility giving you a lot of utility for both 1v1 and group play. If you get in too deep, you can always pop invincibility, and then hopefully after the 12-second duration, anything that was scary is no longer scary, and you can be healed and otherwise just rejoin your group. And same thing with Imprison. This is sort of an optional thing, but I've always enjoyed it. Some people consider it to be a crutch, something that a truly skilled player, quote unquote, would not use. But I see it the other way, that if you are a truly skilled player, you're willing to take a look at anything in your potential arsenal and use it to its max effectiveness. And there are a number of times where Imprison can really change the tide of a battle depending on what's going on. Especially in the arena, it's a guaranteed 20 seconds of 1 versus 1 with no fancy escapes, no anything. And as maneuverable as you are, sometimes it's better to forsake the maneuverability in terms of just trying to kill somebody. So something like Imprison can help with that. Otherwise, nothing too fancy. There are a number of defense passives that could have been taken. The extra 15% block rate isn't too bad. Extra 700 physical defense isn't too bad. Bear's Vigor for extra health. Not too shabby. If you are a tank, of course, Guardian for the extra 50% aggro increase is always acceptable. This build does not dual wield, so you can't really use the dual wield parry deflect. One of the options that you do actually have with this build, though, if you're particularly inclined, is to have a large number of weapon swaps available to you. This is where the sort of higher skill ceiling can come with a Blighter build. When you're doing single target attacks and have no use for your defense or anything, you can switch over to a two-handed weapon to get more out of your, say, Shadow Smite and Charge and all that sort of stuff. If you are going against a Ranger, you could do something like popping Redoubt while you have a one-hander and a shield, and then if Redoubt is down or otherwise don't think it would be useful, you could switch to dual wielding and actually take the passive that allows you to parry at range. So, and that could also maybe just even replace Redoubt if you feel like it's not necessary. And then, of course, generally, because of the extra defense that you'll get and the ability to do the shield slam into Bull Rush combo, you'll be wanting to use a one-hander and shield. So diversifying your armaments for a build like this is probably something that can be very handy. For sure. So I'm just going to do a quick rundown of a combo chain that I found. I'm sure there are subtleties and variations with this, but I feel like just showing a baseline and allowing people to explore is probably best in a build like this. So we're going to open with Stalker's Mark. Stalker's Mark combos very nicely into Overwhelm. Overwhelming a target that has Stalker's Mark on it will cause the target to become tripped, in addition to the stun that they already suffer. You can then sneak behind the target and Shadow Smite for a large amount of damage. If the stun persists, you can actually get a little bit of a trip. Alternatively, if the stun is there, you also get extra damage, but it depends on your global cooldown. I think usually you can't really quite get those to combine. Even if you fail, or if they're immune to stun or trip, this attack does a shackle, which is very devastating against enemy melee. They basically can't do anything for 5.5 seconds that isn't spell casting, so very powerful. At that point, the chain will sort of be expired. If you want to wait and just do some damage against somebody who's shackled, that's fine, but if they're a caster or if you feel otherwise that they will be dangerous to you, you can follow up with a Shield Slam. Shield Slam leads naturally into Bull Rush allowing for more damage and also to be tripped, and Silence. So if they are a spellcaster, you may, instead of wanting to go right into Shadow Smite, you may want to potentially even skip the Shield Slam and just use Bull Rush for a 5.5 second Silence, allowing you to get more damage in and so forth. Precision Strike is a natural follow-up when you have nothing else. It does not provide any crowd control, but does provide a large amount of physical damage, including a lot more damage with crits if you crit from behind. And then you have a Gap Closer / CC Chain continuation with Charge into your bread and butter attacks of Triple Slash. Charging will inflict the snare, and the first attack with Triple Slash will trip a target who is snared. You are at risk if you do not stack these properly, and it will take some practice of hitting the sort of triggered diminishing returns. I'm not exactly sure what the formula is, but I would wager it's something like 4 or 5 applications of the same crowd control within a 20 or 30 second window will cause them to be immune to that crowd control for a certain amount of time. So again, experimentation. As I mentioned in I think the very previous video, you know, listing your abilities in a way where you can just sort of naturally hit the buttons from, you know, in my case, tilde to 6 it's nice, it's convenient, but you should really practice your abilities and know exactly which ones interact and which ones are going to be used at any given situation. So do not autopilot your abilities, and you can understand sometimes that skipping over certain abilities or reordering them at any given time could be useful. So here we go, just going to show this off real quick. We're going to do that. Get a trip off, go behind for the backstab increase. We didn't get a crit, but that's fine. Do a trip, extra damage, there's our crit. And then we're going to go right into another trip. So as you can see, the Giant was really not able to do much of anything until, you know, about 2/3 of its life was dead. And I do not have the greatest physical gear. I'm actually using a Caster Scepter because it happens to be the best physical one-hander that I have. Of course, I don't have my refreshment on, but any extra damage that will be dealt will tally up your metal count to allow for a boastful roar. The shaken debuff, or the distress debuff rather, is quite powerful. 45% less move speed and 20% less skill damage will allow you to keep targets closer as well. One other note is battle focus here in the Battle Rage tree does give you faster cooldowns, a higher parry chance, higher melee critical damage, and decreased mana consumption. This is something you always want to have active when you are in an elongated PvP fight, because it does have a pretty darn decent duration for 20 seconds, about 50% uptime with a 42-second cooldown. And then Frenzy is kind of a weird one. It's very powerful. If you read the tooltips very carefully, it will increase your melee and magic attack by 30 every time you receive damage, up to 10 stacks, which is very, very nice, in addition to the 21% magic damage absorb, which will help you because you're likely not to have a large amount of magic defense. The downside being here that every time you actually deal damage to an enemy, you lower your physical defense. And likewise, after the 35-second duration, it will stun you for 4 seconds. This is a very nasty thing, allowing, of course, for enemies to combo you. In the arena, you have to be very careful with this. If you are going against a spellcaster and you feel like you can make it out of their CC chain, for example, Bondbreaker will allow you to get out of Lassitude and the Bubble Trap. So if you use these at the right time and you've built up enough Frenzy, the first downside of Frenzy, which reduces your physical defense, is largely irrelevant against a spellcaster. So this will allow you to do a phenomenal amount of damage when you can turn the tide. So just be aware of that it's a potential to let you turn the tide if you've been stacking Frenzy. And if you do get to the point where you're about to get stunned, don't hesitate to stun the target, drop back, stealth, and try to run away so that the stun doesn't affect you quite as much. But that's about all I had to say about the Blighter. This is a pretty popular build. It's very effective. I think this is a good build for somebody who's new to the game to pick up because it is pretty straightforward in terms of the interactions, but I feel like there's a lot of subtlety that you can really achieve if you master the exact cooldowns, the exact timing of all these abilities. Just like any build out there, it's always going to have, you know, a higher skill ceiling than when it first appears. So have fun with the Blighter, have fun in ArcheAge, and I will see you guys next time.